And to start us off, we'd like to introduce ourselves. Colette, would you please take it away?
Sure. Thanks, Stephanie. So I'm Colette Bartow. I'm the Senior Manager for the Teaching and Learning Department, and am really happy that we're joined by so many colleagues and have just something I think that is kind of a culmination and one of the most exciting projects that this team has worked on in several years. So back to you, Michelle, I think.
I've been with the OPI since 2015. I'm the Science Instructional Coordinator. And before that, I've basically taught middle school and pre-service teachers. And for a short stint, I was a principal in a 3-room schoolhouse.
Hi, I'm Sonia Woodford, and thank you all for being here today. I am the Mathematics Instructional Coordinator, and I started with the OPI in September. And prior to that, I was in Alaska for 7 years at the as instructional coach at the Alaska Native Cultural Charter School in Anchorage. And prior to that, I taught for 20 years in various size schools, various locations throughout Wyoming, some one-room schools, and then in town or urban Wyoming schools. But thank you again for being here.
And I'm Stephanie Swigert. I'm the English Language Arts and Literacy Specialist. I came to the OPI in August of 2020, and I came from the University of Montana. In my graduate program, I was a TA, and so I taught college writing there. Prior to that, I was with Ronan School District as a middle school English Language Arts teacher, speech and debate coach, then MBI facilitator. And I also have taught high school both in Washington State and also for Trio Upward Bound at the summers, during summers at University of Montana. And for our learning objectives today, we want to introduce the associations framework, which is the culmination of a long time, a lot of work by our unit. And we'd also like to engage in collective thought processes and invite stakeholder input and partnerships.
Thank you. So this is kind of a technical note at the beginning, and just wanted to make sure that that all of you were aware that there's huge challenge in bringing together information about standards. And we're used to accessing standards in PDF documents or sometimes in a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet. And so one of the catalysts, before we put this project together, was our ability to publish this associations framework as well as all of our state standards in a data set. And so we just wanted to make note at this kind of early part of our conversation that districts can access a data file of this associations framework, and it is something that can be loaded into a student information system or a learning management system. Both Infinite Campus and PowerSchool are really good partners, along with this organization that's called IMS Global right now until July, when it changes over to a new name. But like I said, this is a technical note. We're providing documents kind of in that traditional format of a PDF so that you can take a look at the ideas and the information. But to truly embed this work in the types of learning systems that our students and our teachers are using more and more to create a digital ecosystem, IMS Global is the technical source for this information.
Okay, so we kind of did this in a spring format. So the seed, what started this is a long time ago, a year ago, when we had 5 new standards come out. We were, as a team, trying to think of how can we help teachers with all of this. And so, of course, we were thinking integration. And we were just in the process of coding those 5 new sets of standards so that they would be able to be used in the global network or the CASE network, and also so that they would have a code for teachers to rely on. And then in order to introduce those new standards, we did a presentation, and the large presentation was for 4 times for the Montana Small School Alliance group. And there, actually, we have to give credit to them for this whole association's framework because we were thinking about it, but they kind of pulled it together. So we had taken, for this presentation, we had taken down the standards, the 5 new standards, and we have broken them down into 2 components: what the students need to know, which is the content, and what students need to be able to do, which would be the practices, the skills, and we use the anchor standards for ELA. And so I'm going to steal the screen here for a second and take you to what we gave them. So this was one component we gave them. We put the all of the new standards, and this one we did not add English language arts and science or math. We just put the new ones on here. And then their chore was to like think of an idea like citizen or citizenship and type it in and then see what all highlighted, just to help them be able to connect across, especially for K-5 teachers to be able to integrate. The next, can you see my screen? Sorry, thank you. The next component we did was we had them look at this, and we had taken, put onto a Jamboard all of the do's of a standard. So the skills, the practices, and then this was like a practice one. I think Stephanie and I put this together, and we tried to see how could these tie together. And then this was our example to them, and this is what we gave them. And then a sheet to work from to see what connections they could make. So this is what they presented to us as their patterns. I'm going to make this a little bigger. And so I want you to just kind of look at this and see what you think of it. So you could, well, let's see, I'll take an example when for presenting so the SS is social studies, and then the CS is skills for computer science, and then technology skills is the orange and ELA is the orange. So you can see how they've put that together in presenting. And then they have all of the colors for research. So they could see where the ties were together. Well, I'm not advancing, so. And this one, I'm going to make it a little bigger because I don't think you can see it very well. And this one, you can see similar things that they've put together, and how in the center of all this, we have collaboration, and they even wrote on their slide that collaboration is central. Yeah. And in this one, how they pulled apart these skills and practices were into collaborate, communicate, and problem solving. And that they basically, I'm going to stop share now. And they basically set the tone. We looked at that and we started thinking, how fabulous is this? Our teachers of Montana are looking at a piece of the standard, and they are blending and linking these with the best practices in instruction. We were really excited. And so, Stephanie, that's kind of where we went from for there.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, and so that was just an exciting time, and that was kind of, you know, in the beginning of our work, we were looking for connections just between English and science. Just to kind of sum up, we were looking for those connections between English and science. And moving out from that, when these 5 new standards came into play, we had this awesome opportunity to see what the MSSA teachers would do with an integrated model. And that was just, it was so incredible to see what they were doing. And so that was kind of the seed, and then it just sprouted. We went back and mined all of their data and looked at what they had, like kind of some common threads that they had identified. And we started playing around with some of these ideas. And around that time, we really were starting to see a common thread, a common vein of the 4 C's emerging. So communicate, collaborate, creative thinking, and creativity and critical thinking, right? And so we were like, okay, this is great. This is a great place to start. And we started kind of moving things around and seeing, does everything fit where it fits? Does everything fit within those 4 C's? And we found that it didn't. So we needed to expand. So we started looking at other aspects. We started looking at the project-based learning was our next step. And we wanted to see what aspects of project-based learning would potentially help us to continue to categorize and find ways and areas where there was that integrated overlap. And so throughout our process, we were able to look at, I'm just going to scroll down, pardon me. We were able to look at both project-based learning, inquiry-based learning. We also, at that time, was right around the same time that the social emotional learning competencies were published by OPI. So we looked at those and pulled those in. And we also looked at the Montana legislative goals, and that was a collaborative piece that Colette brought in. She said, well, what about these Montana legislative goals? It sounds like there's some real overlap there. And so we built, several different models of how do we make all of this fit. And at one point, Michelle said, well, we can't be the ones who, just make this designation. This is bigger than us. And so we started to pull in content area experts. For example, folks who had worked on the new social studies standards, we asked them to look at the social studies skills and fit them into what we had established are the 6 competencies, right? We had identified the critical thinking, the creativity, collaboration, and communication. And we had added on to that to include the social emotional learning and inquiry based off of these frameworks I just showed you, the inquiry-based learning, Montana social emotional learning competencies, and the Montana legislative goals, along with project-based learning competencies. So kind of throughout looking at all of that, we came up with these 6 competencies. And we, again, asked all of these content area experts to come in and share their views. And we had them do some kind of blind work where they were able to match their the various skill sets within each content area to the competencies without conferring with others. And then we brought them together and had that, allowed time for them to have that conversation. And kind of at the end result of that, we were able to match every skill. We call them collectively skills, but they are the practices, anchor standards, and skills for each of the content areas. We were able to match them up with a competency or more. What we found was that most skills, practices, and anchor standards, collectively known as skills, we found that they often met with several different competencies as we had described them. And so that brought about some very fun conversations about, well, what does this look like? And so when we were able to think about publishing this into the IMS Global Case Network, we were able to build a framework of integrated associations. And so each of the skills were already uploaded into the IMS Global Case Network. And we were able to build associations into that framework and develop our own framework of associations so that when you access the competency through the framework in IMS Global, you can pull on that and find where the associations are for other content area skills. So if I'm an ELA teacher, which I used to be, and I'm looking at one of the anchor standards, let's say I'm looking at an anchor standard that has been associated with communication. There are many, and for writing, for example, and I want to say, okay, well, what other communication skills or practices in another content area connect with this competency of communication? How do I find that? I can easily go through the case network and find those connected associations. We've also published them for you here in this document as a, some people really like tables. It's a little easier for them to understand and read. So you can see how each of the skills in CTE meet within these various competencies. And then you can kind of cross apply that here to the computer science skills or the ELA anchor standards, again, collectively referred to as skills. And there's so many ELA, we just take up too much space. We love our words. And then of course you have your mathematics skills and your science skills and your social studies skills and your tech integration skills. Sorry for the scrolling. But again, we want this to be useful and helpful. And we hope that this is going to have some fun future implications. So that I will turn it over to Sonia.
I think Colette.
So as I said earlier, this is kind of a technical note, but as I have thought about over these many years that I've been working with state standards, helping to facilitate the writing and the revision of state standards. And there's some friends on this call today. I'm thinking about Jennifer Statham in particular, who's been, and Michelle, who have been through many rounds of standards revision. We do that work and that we hope that it's useful. And so what I've always thought about is, how do we better make the words of the standards, the message of the standards, and now these connections between standards more actionable and able, to be used by teachers where they need it most. We know that there's a really big importance in the connection between what the standards say and then how we know that students have learned those things and can do those things. So again, this is a little bit of a technical note, but the case network that we've referred to allows us to publish standards in a way that make the frameworks, that first orange bullet there, accessible. So we define what the academic standards are and the competencies. We can access the statements of what those students at any grade level should know and be able to do. And then this third step around the competency framework, again, it's a way to electronically connect the dots between all of these different content areas. And then actually the next stage of development that might be something that we would like to kind of poke your thinking about is that we can actually create competency framework rubrics or rubrics associated with standards and that show all of those connections that teachers can then use to help students know what they have learned and where they need to go next. So I'm going to steal the screen here for just a moment, and I'm going to share what the homepage of the IMS Global Case Network looks like. You'll have links to all of this, and all of this is linked from the OPI homepage. But Montana is one of 50 states that has published its state standards in Case Network. And what you'll see is the complete list of Montana standards. So there's arts, all of the individual standards. And then if we come down the list a bit, the Montana Standards Association framework is also in this list. So you do have to, if you want to download, you can create a free account. Some of you have those accounts already. But what you'll see is another representation of that association's framework. You see the 6 main categories. And then as you begin to kind of dig into each of those levels, you click in, you see full statements. And then this is really important. It also shows you the link to library media, social studies, computer science, all of those connections that we, started with the Small Schools Alliance teachers, worked with those content experts, and then Michelle, Sonia, and Stephanie took all of that data and took the next step to actually publish those connections in this machine readable format. So you can look at this in a list. There's another view that shows you the connections. And then the magic and the technical part of this is that your district's technology coordinator, whoever maintains your learning management systems or your student information system, can then upload this so that as you're creating lessons or your own local rubrics, you're basically picking a standard or being able to choose this group of standards, and those are going to automatically connect to your lessons, your rubrics, your local assessments that are all contained in this wonderful digital ecosystem that we're really relying on to provide a robust instructional environment for our students. So that's kind of the little, again, another more technical spiel, but I guess the analogy that I've used to think about the difference between publishing standards in a digital format as opposed to publishing a PDF is that a PDF is just a file that is a piece of paper that you don't print out. And so you still, it's hard to crack that open. Like you can shred the piece of paper, or I don't know, if you think of it as something that's kind of captured under glass, you have to break through the glass or do something different in order to actually use that information. So that next step that we've taken in publishing to Case Network is part of allowing freer, more useful access to our state standards. So I'll turn it now over to Sonia, and be asking questions too in the chat. Stop us if you have something that you want to dig into a little bit more, but got a little bit more to kind of go through content wise, and then we really want to get your thoughts on what this has been so far.
All right, so I came on board with this project after it was well underway, and I just am grateful to all three of these people for welcoming me into the project, and I was honored to be a part of it. And it took me a while just to wrap my head around the history and its evolution, as well as all of that Colette just shared with you. And but it is very exciting, and I was honored to be a part of compiling all of the responses, compiling the data, and then many, many rich discussions around the skills and practices and their associations with those with the competencies. So it has just been an honor to be a part of this project. And now, I know you just heard about it, but we'd like to give you a chance to share some of your initial reactions and possibly some of your brainstorming, your thoughts around how this could be beneficial, how this could be useful. It looks like we have people from various departments, and both within the OPI and outside of the OPI, various areas of expertise. And so we'd like to just have a Jamboard available to you, and Michelle's going to put that link in the chat, and Stephanie's going to share that Jamboard. And so the first page of the Jamboard just reminds you what the competencies are that we were linking each of those or showing associations with each of the skills and practices from the content areas. And then the next page, we'd like to solicit just your reactions, your thoughts. How might this associations framework and the fact that it is uploaded onto the IMS Global site, how might that be useful? So Stephanie, if you want to go to the next page. I'm guessing that many people have used Jamboards before, but she's going to show us how to pick up a sticky note and just type in any thoughts that you might have. It could be questions, or it could be reactions, or the ways that you might see this being useful.
So while you're thinking and writing, I don't want to interrupt your thoughts, but one of the I guess the beginnings of this idea actually came from something that the OPI had created when our state standards were originally put together back in 1999 and 2000. Michelle and Stephanie have described a process of using data and really analyzing and then creating these files that are going to be pretty accessible. But back in the old days, a group was convened and they sat around a table and they used sticky notes and poster charts. And they actually, and they were content experts and teachers from different grade levels and that, but they created these posters that were the Montana Standards integration charts. And I remember having those on the wall of the teachers' workroom in the school that I worked at, and having those as a really interesting tool and a really helpful tool to connect the dots between different lessons and content areas. And so that's kind of part of the genesis of this idea as well, is that it's something that over the years people asked about, well, are you going to be able to create those integration posters again and send them out so we can put them on our teacher's workroom wall? And so we're really moving forward into the 21st century, further down the road, and really providing digital access to that type of information. So, it's reflecting back on a need that was identified 20 and more years ago, but now with more modern tools and really treating this information as data that can go into our digital learning systems. I'm very excited and really pleased that we've brought this project to this point and at this time.
I appreciate all of your thoughts, and I know it might take a while for people to think about how this might be useful. I know we've brainstormed a lot, and like Colette was mentioning, I was thinking about all the curriculum mapping I've been involved in, where we have giant spreadsheets, and just how this would really facilitate that work. I think also on the end of data collection, if you're looking at a district or a school and wanting to look at some of these competencies and or practices, and just looking at where they're being taught and which ones you might want to re-emphasize. I think there's so much potential there. And I think just the integration at that level, we often think about integrating specifically with content standards, but looking at those skills and practices and then those competencies. We were having a discussion the other day around just what skills do students need and abilities do they need to be successful in the workplace, and what do workplaces look like, and all of the collaboration and critical thinking, and so integrating at that level as with the competencies, I think that is so exciting, and making that really doable with some of these electronic resources is very exciting. But we also think that people in the field using the tool will help us see how useful it is. And we're hoping for some partnerships, possibly where schools or districts or consortiums might be willing to pilot using the tool, and giving us feedback how it has been useful for them. I don't know if anyone, I appreciate your thoughts on the Jamboard. I don't know if anyone wants to unmute and say anything to the group or share. Either way is fine.
So one of the reasons why I was asking about how we could track the use of IFA lessons utilization, and whether or not you run it by Dan McGee, is because I spoke with him and Carrie yesterday about utilizing some of the early childhood warning systems and other such things for tracking data purposes regarding our use, district's use of Indian education funds. So I was just wondering if this could be a tool to that extent, I guess.
I think that's a really interesting question, Matt. And I don't know if so. Yeah, I'm just trying to think about how that would happen, because if lessons are also tagged with the information from the association's framework, and those lessons exist in the school's learning management system, then conceivably, yes, if you have a way to extract that information as a report, this is kind of a fundamental piece to making that happen. But you have to have the lesson tagged with the standard from the association's framework, or just the regular standards, and then there has to be a further connection to other outcomes or other programs that would allow you to do that. So it's a really, really interesting question. It's part of, one of the reasons that the development of this case network and basically the data specification for state standards has been in the make for quite a while. We want to be able to chart ultimately how is student success happening, or if there are gaps and needs, where is the breakdown? And without a fully connected and integrated system that allows us to do that, it's pretty hard to know that our funds are being put to the best use, or that the resources that are being used are the best for those students in that community. So it would be really good to have Dan McGee's kind of take and be able to share this information with him as well. So thank you for that.
I will add that at this time in the case network, the essential understandings are not published as our standards are, but I'm curious, your comment kind of sparked some curiosity. I'm curious what that would look like if we were to publish the essential understandings alongside the standards, and if there was an opportunity for some connections to be made within case or within a framework or a revised version of framework, or however that looks, for future going forward. But I think that's a big question that we've all continued to, circulate with, especially in the American Indian Student Achievement Task Force that Michelle, Sonia, and I are a part of as well, thinking about like how are the IFA lessons being taught in conjunction with the standards. What does this look like in a classroom? And I'm thinking back to even my own teaching days where, a lot of our IFA lessons were place-based. And so they involved field trips, and that meant that they were cross-collaborative across content areas, right? And so thinking about how this framework might somehow lend itself to supporting, encouraging, and maybe even tracking, as you were suggesting, the IFA lessons that teachers are teaching, and potentially connection to essential understandings.
It's an interesting thing, and I don't know that we've necessarily discussed that specifically about. I know we have talked about publishing the essential understandings. The main difference is that the essential understandings, in order to really fit the model of the case network, which is competencies and academic standards, they're at a different grain size or different level of information than the standards are when talking about the essential understandings. But our state standards very intentionally and very specifically have standards that connect to either the essential understandings or kind of a broader sense of the people and places of our state, kind of Indian Ed for All writ large. So you would already be able to point to specific standards and specific competencies that by design and intention are connected to Indian Education for All and the essential understanding. So it's already embedded because it's already embedded in the standards themselves. So we've had conversations about, what would be gained or what the value would be of publishing the essential understandings. And I think that's something that should definitely return to as a group. And also because this presentation is really intended for a more external group, bringing that question to our curriculum directors, our other partners, our teachers, and find out if that would be something that's useful to them. The easy part is publishing into the case network, right? The difficult part, and this is really where we're at the jumping off point today, is how can teachers, districts really leverage how we publish the standards, how we publish this association's framework to actually change instruction and change how we understand the connections between standards, achievement, and what students do. So these are great questions to help us think about what's next.
So I apologize, I had a phone call, so if this is totally off base, please excuse me, but I am so excited to see this, and I'm wondering if anybody might be available to come show this to our social emotional learning work group. The fact that there was a column there for SEL, I am so excited about that for a lot of reasons, but especially right now, because there's some unknowns about SEL. We'll put it that way, and the future of it. And I just think this is just strengthens it, because now it's there. We see how it's embedded. And it also helps answer the question that a lot of folks have on, how does this all fit? And, how can I do what I normally do as a teacher and still be working towards the competencies? So I had no idea this was going to happen. And I'm so grateful to everyone who involved, who worked on this. I can't say enough about it. I'm so excited, and thank you. This is awesome.
Michelle, I am so glad that you are on the call today too. One of the concerns that I've read recently regarding social emotional learning is how does it, is this rigorous academic learning, or is it taking the place of rigorous academic learning? And our hope is that people will be able to see that it's absolutely embedded in rigorous academic learning. And not just the opinion of Sonia and Michelle and Stephanie, but the opinion of other content area experts that we pulled in and had weigh in on this. And we had when we did the social emotional learning, I will speak to that. Of course, we had the competency name, but we also had pulled out the SEL competencies for the work group to look at. So they were able to specify, how does this relate to this specific competency, or does it relate to this specific competency? So we didn't end up publishing that information, but it was certainly part of our process and our conversation. And my dog agrees. Sorry.
That's great. Thank you, Stephanie. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. I'm so excited about this. This is fantastic. Thank you.
This meeting is being recorded, and so this and the links will be, after we get them made accessible, they will be made available on the Content Standards Learning page. I'm going to just put the link in the chat because it's on the tab for professional learning, because I know you're all going to want to see it.
I think too, Michelle, that if I can speak for the three of us, that we'd love to come share it with your group and get their thoughts as well, because I think that's a big part of it. And I appreciate all your thoughts today. And if you have any thoughts, I get where it takes a while to kind of settle in and then start thinking of the possibilities. And once you start thinking of the possibilities, it just, to me, it kind of snowballs. But we would love to hear any additional thoughts that you have going forward, or uses for it, or just other ideas that you might have.
Yeah, and you have the
sounds
link to the association's framework, and more of this information will be posted on the website. But take that document and share it with your colleagues. Invite teachers that you work with, or particular districts or curriculum directors that you work with, and just show them that PDF. And we'd love to hear more about the thoughts that you're able to gather. It's a lot to take in. We're talking about 2 solid years of work, essentially, in coming to the point where there's something that is shareable, and that I think really will inspire some good thinking about how to implement this in schools. So please do share, and then get back in touch with Sonia, Michelle, and Stephanie, and that will help them to kind of develop the next steps of professional development around this, and additional resources that will help districts unlock the secrets and the wonder of these standards associations framework.